Hello friends, welcome to SQL Server tutorial. In the last video, we learned about the classifier function. Here, we will create the classifier function. Here, we create a classifier function called getWG class. So, this will be our classifier function name. The classifier function returns sysname. So, sysname is a reference to the database object. So, that's the data type. So, you can return a view, you can return a table or any database object. So in that case, you can specify return type as sysname. So with schema binding option, so that's the option we will use when we are creating the classifier function. With schema binding option, make sure work groups WL group 1, WL group 2. Inside the body of the function, we will use these two objects. With the schema binding option, make sure work groups WL group 1 and WL group 2 will not be deleted before deleting the classifier function. Why? Because the classifier function becomes meaningless when these two workload group doesn't exist. So if that's the case, we want to make sure that this schema object should not be deleted when the function exists. So in order to delete these two database object, we need to delete the classifier function first, then you can go ahead and delete these workload groups. Here we are using create function syntax. Just like how you create normal function, you are creating the function create function. Function name is getWG class. So create function, this is our classifier function name. It returns sysname. So this denotes the function can return any database object with schema binding. So the function, if it uses any SQL Server database object, so the function is binding with those objects. That means without deleting this function, you cannot delete those schema objects, because those schema objects are bound to this getWG class. The classifier function, this is the classifier function, right? The classifier function returns WL group 01 when connected session is SQL Server SA account. So for that, here we make use of sys user underscore name equal to SA. So this conditional check tells that the connected session is SA. So if that's the case, we declare a variable, local variable for this function, and we name that as data type is sysname. In this variable, we are assigning the WL group 01, and for all other users, we are returning WL group 2, right? If connected, so this is where SQL Server, let's say the incoming user is guest. If user is guest, we will go through the else portion and we return workload group 02. So if incoming user is SA, we return workload group 01, because here we are making the condition, right? Conditional check tells that connected user or incoming request is from SA user, so it returns WL group 01. So that's the duty of classifier function. You can see return workload name, right? So resource governor depends on this classifier function. When there is an incoming request, resource governor knows that the request should assigned with a specific workload group. So resource governor depends on the classifier function, and it gets the workload group and assigns the workload group to the incoming request. So for example, if connected user is guest, workload group 2 is assigned to the connected user, and if that's the case, a low profile is used to climb the resource from our resource pool. So the resource pool, we know that it is my resource pool, so that's where the workload group is assigned. So it uses 10% of CPU and 5% of memory. So I forgot what percentage we assigned for the workload group, right? So if it is a SA user account, it may get a higher percentage of CPU quota as well as memory. Alright, now let's go to demo and create the classifier function. So let's create a new query session. So here use master DB because classifier is not a DB specific function. DB specific function means the classifier function which we are going to create now does not belongs to any of these databases. So it's at a global level, it's a management function which supplies information to the resource governor, my resource pool, and the classifier function assigns the workload group to the incoming request. So that's why here we are stating use master. Next, we create our classifier function, and if you say create function, this is our classifier function name which returns its name. Then we are asking for with the schema binding option. So we declare a local variable, and based on the incoming user, we either assign workload group 1 or workload group 2, right? So finally we are returning that. So this is our classifier function, we will create it. So now classifier function is created. We have to tell resource governor to use this specific classifier function. To do that, we have to disable the resource governor if it is already running. So instead of making such a test, we can directly go ahead and disable the resource governor and modify the resource governor to make use of our classifier function get wg class. So here is the code for it. It was not shown in the slide, and you can look at the syntax. Alter resource governor, we already disabled it, and now we are carrying out the modification to the resource governor. Alter resource governor with classifier function equal to, we are giving our classifier function name. And if you see, our classifier function is assigning the request to workload group 1 or workload group 2. So now we will execute it, and now resource governor is making use of this classifier function or attached to our classifier function name. So to carry out this change, we disabled the resource governor, right? Now we have to enable it. Once you enable, the resource governor will making use of our classifier function, assigns the incoming request to a specific workload group. Now we will enable the resource governor. So that's all. Now resource governor is up and running, and it is making use of our classifier function. So SA user account will get a higher quota of CPU and memory, and all other incoming request will be assigned to workload group that get lower importance compared to workload group 01. All right, so just now you saw the demo. So it will be hard checking how the CPU and memories are consumed by connecting the SQL Server with the SA and guest login. So that's why in the demo we haven't included it. That's all here in this video. Thank you for watching. Bye. So in the next video we will show you how to delete the classifier function and resource pools and leave the resource pool to the default setting. So thanks again.